It all began on an average Tuesday, or as the sparrows call it, treat yo seed day. 3 little sparrows landed on my feeder plate, beaks up, feathers fluffed, looking like they'd just flown in from a modeling gig in a high-end garden catalog. They were the very picture of innocence, until they started fighting over a peanut like it was the last breadstick at Olive Garden. Then, more came. Oh boy. One moment it was a quiet trio. The next, full-blown Feathergeddon. I swear 100 sparrows showed up. One even wore a tiny fedora. They took over the feeder like they were staging a musical called Les Beakerables. There were choreographed hops. There was interpretive chirping. One sparrow did a dramatic solo peck while another dramatically fainted off the rim. Mealworms had been restocked early that morning. I thought I was being proactive. Turns out I was just ringing the dinner bell for the bird version of Coachella. And then came the VIPs. Mr. and Mrs. Bluebird, aka the royal couple of the backyard. They don't just arrive, they make an entrance. Mr. Blue flew straight to the feeder, feathers all sleeked back like he'd just come from a nest-side business meeting. Mrs. Blue? Oh, she perched on the chair like she was judging the rest of the birds on a show called The Peck Factor. But, disaster. The worms. Gone. All gone. Like someone hit Ctrl+Alt+Del on the buffet. Mr. Blue stared at the empty plate with the intensity of a bird realizing he just flew into a window of his own expectations. Then he threw some serious side-eye, yes, birds can side-eye, and flew off in a I will not be part of this underseason nonsense rage. Probably to leave a 1-star Yelp review under the name angry_bluebird69. Mrs. Blue hopped down and poked around the crumbs with the sass of a bird who very much wanted to speak to the manager. Then, poof, she disappeared behind the camera, clearly trying to find the security footage and expose the seed thieves on TikTok. I sighed. This wasn't a backyard. It was a peckastrophe. So, like any responsible landlord of the SKYBNB feeder complex, I added a second plate. Because if you build it, they will peck. Afternoon delight, for some. At lunchtime, the sparrows returned like they never left. They weren't just eating, they were mugging for imaginary cameras, flapping dramatically every time someone reached across their side of the plate. One sparrow stood atop a peanut, spread his wings, and screamed like he just won an Oscar for Best Background Bird in a Feeder Scene. Then, at precisely 4:20 p.m., in a move suspiciously punctual for a woodland rodent, Mr. Squirrel emerged from a bush with a dramatic flair of someone who just realized lunch was ending in 10 minutes. He darted to the feeder like his name was on the reservation. He was ravenous. And I know he's not a raven, we've covered this, but I'm just saying, he ate like one. Here's the twist. He wasn't even hoarding. This guy was snacking for sport. He was grazing like a tiny, fluffy cow with a caffeine addiction. I think I saw him make eye contact with a peanut and whisper, "It's you and me, pal." Meanwhile, the Carolina Wren was rummaging through my patio chair like he dropped his phone in the cushions. He had the same energy as someone frantically patting their pockets while looking for their keys. The Blues are back in town. Just when things started to settle down, Mr. and Mrs. Blue returned, strolling in like exhausted parents who finally found a babysitter. They seemed slightly more relaxed this time. I think the baby bluebirds, the fledglings, finally gave them a breather. Or maybe they just took a day off. Or flew to therapy. Who knows? And they were totally unbothered by my dogs, who, by the way, are in serious birdwatcher training. But let's be real, the birds treat them like mall security guards. Present, well-meaning, and completely ineffective. But then, chaos strikes again. The fledglings return. They land like drama pigeons in a Shakespearean tragedy. "Dad, we're dying. Of starvation. Feed us or we shall perish." Thankfully, the mealworms had been restocked. Again. I'm basically their personal Uber Eats for grubs at this point. Mr. Blue, bless him, tries to explain foraging like he's doing a TED Talk titled Pecking with Purpose, a guide for the modern hatchling. The fledglings protest. We're too young to learn. Why forage when we can scream and have food delivered to our beaks? Eventually, Mr. Blue gives up and drags them to the chair like a dad forcing his kids to eat a single green bean at dinner. Meanwhile, Mrs. Blue swoops in, grabs a worm, completely ignores her kids, and flies off like she's got a hot yoga class to get to. I have never seen her feed them. I'm beginning to think she's just the CFO of the family and lets Dad do all the worm work. Squirrel acrobatics. A subplot. And just when I thought this day couldn't get more unhinged, a second squirrel appears. But not just any squirrel. This guy. He's an acrobatic legend. He parkours off the tree, twirls midair, lands with jazz paws. He's part Cirque du Squirrel, part caffeinated toddler. He may have just left his own nest because he's tiny, scruffy, and eating like the IRS is after his nut stash. I named him Chippy Von Jumpenstein. He did 5 flips, ate half the plate, then disappeared with a single back handspring into the shrubs. Iconic. Final thoughts from the feeder. At this point, my backyard is no longer a peaceful birdwatching spot. It's a reality show, a daycare center, a squirrel circus, a heavily mismanaged buffet. I need a bouncer, probably a goose, a third feeder plate, with surge pricing, and possibly a therapist for Mr. Blue. Also thinking about setting up a feeder suggestion box. So far, the comment cards would read, Bird, not enough worms. 0 stars. Fledgling A. Chipmunk, bring back the sunflower clusters. They were nutalicious. Mr. Squirrel. Bird, saw a dog. Didn't care. Ate 3 peanuts. Felt powerful. Carolina Wren. Bird, plate was warm. Staff was friendly. Would peck again. Sparrow in fedora. And me. I just refill the worms, refill the peanuts, and try not to lose my mind every time a sparrow yells at me through the window like I'm late with their lunch. Coming soon in Episode 2, The Nestflix Chronicles. The Squirrels Unionize. Mrs. Blue installs a spa in the hanging fern. Carolina Wren finds a mirror and questions his identity.